Welcome back to This Week. Time now to get the views of our media and political experts, Metro Councilman at Large Jerry Maynard, and heard on 1510 WLAC syndicated talk show host Steve Gill. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
A lot of discussion this week on tenure, on collective bargaining here in Tennessee. The tenure thing we'll start with. Looks like there's going to be change to tenure, at least in the requirements from 3 years to be granted tenure to 5 years. I think even the teachers kind of realized this was the least that was going to happen.
Yeah, the battle is going to be lost regarding tenure. We just don't know what it's going to look like. But the problem is, Bob, there are no studies, no data to show that changing the tenure process and structure will help increase test performance, will help increase student performance, will help increase the experience of the students in our classrooms. What we need to do is have education reform where we bring all the stakeholders, parents, teachers, every community organization and agency, including the Chamber, the NAACP, and so let's work together to reform education based on data that proves that your reforms will work.
This is where the governor really wanted to start, too.
Well, I think people need to keep in mind that this is not about taking tenure away from any teacher in Tennessee who has it. That's not even part of the package. This is all a matter of with new teachers we hire, instead of having 3 years to evaluate them before they get tenure and then almost impossible to fire, we're going to have 5 years. I would agree with Jerry that unless we do our job in that 5 years and weed out the bad ones, which we've not been doing in the 3-year period, then it's really not going to have any impact. We've got to make sure that whether it's 3 years or 5 years, if somebody shouldn't be in the classroom, we don't let them in the classroom and get that kind of protection that keeps us from being able to get rid of them after the fact.
There's just no evidence and no study that shows that students perform better under a 5-year tenure process versus a 3-year tenure process. That's all I'm asking. Show me somewhere in the world or in the country where students who are in the system with a 5-year tenure track does better than a 3-year tenure track.
But it's not the tenure track time period. It's keeping bad teachers out of the classroom.
And
everybody knows you get rid of the bad teachers, you improve. There's some studies that say if we would just get rid of the bad teachers and replace them with mediocre teachers, not even good ones, just mediocre, we would see the test scores of American students put us at the top of the heap with other industrialized nations. It's all about keeping the bad teachers out. And again, if we're not going to do the job in 3, we better do it in 5.
We saw teachers rallying this week in Williamson County and Wilson County, urging their constituents to call lawmakers and hopefully change their mind in collective bargaining. There seems to be an inroad of sorts from the governor's office, from the speaker's office, to maybe not necessarily totally do away with collective bargaining in Tennessee, but going to change it specifically, drastically anyway.
Well, I think, again, when you look at the issues, we have to look at what is going to improve the quality of our schools, the quality of the teaching. For the last 40 years or so, we've had the teachers union in charge of our schools. It hasn't worked. I think it's time to try something else rather than letting union bosses run our schools.
The teachers union does not control our schools. You have mayors, you have elected officials, you have school boards. School boards are the ones who are responsible for hiring and firing the school director rather. So you don't have unions running the schools. And what we have to do is look at this, Bob. Collective bargaining has nothing to do with fixing the budget and or improving the classroom experience. Collective bargaining has nothing to do with that. And I believe that this is an attack. It's retribution. And here's what I believe. The TEA would not give more money to Republicans. The Republicans are making them pay. And that's what's going on right now. That's it.
The teachers union has controlled the legislative process in Tennessee for the last 40 years when the Democrats, who are completely beholden and have received virtually every dime from the teachers union, have set the rules, even requiring that TEA has advantages over any other teachers organization in the state. Let's put everybody on a fair level. And if teachers want to be part of the union, let them write a check to the union each month rather than having it deducted from their paychecks. We'll see how much they really want to be in the union when they have to start writing a check.
Even some TEA folks have admitted, though, that part of this is payback. There's no doubt about that. And maybe it wasn't smart on their part to totally support Democrats and not at least look at some Republican candidate. You know, that people are human and this is what's going to happen.
Well, this is retribution. But, Bob, let's deal with it partially. As a councilman at large with a school board, I wanted Steve to deal with this. The school board does not want to negotiate with multiple bargaining units. They do not want to negotiate with 5 or 6 different bargaining units and or individuals coming to talk to them. We're going to have a budget crunch with Metro government. And guess what? The school board's going to have to present one budget. We cannot say to the school board, present us a budget, and they say, no, we're still negotiating with these 12 different units, 12 different bargaining units, because not one bargaining unit speaks for all teachers, and that's a problem.
Well, if the teachers were smart, they'd let somebody other than TEA do it, because across the state of Tennessee and the counties where the TEA has not represented them in their bargain negotiations, they are making more money than they are with the TEA's representative. So, Jerry, my recommendation would be that they don't let the TEA represent them before you
Wisconsin Republicans found a way to get through what the governor wanted to get through. in regards to collective bargaining, not just for teachers but for all public employees there. The Democrats were staying away, and they continued to stay away, and it didn't seem to matter. They found a loophole and got through what they wanted to get through.
Well, the legislation there will require teachers to pay, and public employees to pay 12% towards their own health insurance, 5.6% towards their own pension funds. That's not the kind of death of the middle class that I think we're hearing out of Wisconsin. The other big thing it will do is require that teachers there write a check to the union if they want to be a member of the union rather than having it deducted from their paychecks. We don't do that for other entities. We shouldn't do it for the union.
Here's my response is collective bargaining had nothing to do with balancing the budget in Wisconsin. Again, this was punitive in nature by the Republicans. Here's where you have the problem. The problem is that the governor said in Wisconsin, I want local governments to be able to set the wages. So in other words, you take away collective bargaining so that you can come in and say, you know what, besides police and fire, but you know what, public employees, this is what we're going to pay you. There's no negotiations. There's no representation on your part. This is all you're going to get, and that's what you're going to get. That's what's going to hurt the middle class. And the unions have already agreed to take the pay cuts. The unions have already agreed to pay more into their pensions. What does this have to do with collective bargaining other than punitive actions towards the union?
Next week, Governor Haslam gives his first State of the State. Will we hear, do you think, some kind of commitment for collective bargaining, against collective bargaining, something in that address where we see where the governor stands on this issue?
Some of the top legislators are telling me that the governor will decide this weekend what he intends to do on Monday in that State of the Union or State of the State in terms of collective bargaining. He'll obviously talk about his tenure plan,
right,
his vision of improving education in Tennessee. Whether or not he's going to include collective bargaining in that, he's apparently going to decide this weekend, and I guess we'll find out.
20 seconds.
Here's what I want to know. Where are the jobs? I want him to talk about where the jobs are, because if you look at Haslam, he hasn't told us what he stands for. He hasn't told us what programs he stands for. Where are the jobs, and where's the plan to increase jobs and improve jobs here in the state of Tennessee? That's what I want to hear, instead of all this stuff about currency and guns in schools and all those things.
We may find out in his State of the State next week. Steve Gill, Jerry Maynard, appreciate your time. Stay with us. This week continues in a moment.